Hi, my name is Philip Chuquette, and the Secretary has asked me to facilitate the advisory panel. And before we introduce the panel, there's just a few basic things that we need to cover to make sure that we do things correctly. I mentioned previously that the Fire Marshal has paid 2 visits, one yesterday and one today, to make sure that we understand and abide by the rules and the limits for occupancy in this room. So there are enough chairs. Hi, Mr. Pro. How are you? Phil Chuquette.
My apologies for being late.
No problem. No problem. You're actually on time. We're a smidge early. So there are enough chairs in this room that meet the fire marshal's requirements. There are no extra chairs, so there are no standing allowed, and we've got our 2 standing media folks covered by 2 empty chairs. For additional access to the public, there's a conference room down the hall that will hold another 15 or so, and there's a conference room on the first floor that will hold another 15 or so. The meeting is being streamed live over the internet. It's also being shown via video conference at several locations, I believe including the Lynchburg District and the Culpeper District. So we want to remember that we're all live here and keep that in the back of our minds. I would ask you to either mute or turn off your cell phone, put it on vibrate, whatever you do to hopefully keep it from ringing. I want to cover one important thing from a safety point of view. Should we need to leave the room for any reason, we should go out this door, down the steps, out the front door, and walk to the left. There are restrooms on this floor and the floor beneath us. They are out this door to the right. When we do the introductions of the panel, Ms. Dittmar needs to do something in order to make sure that the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors are within the law. There are enough members of the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors here that she will need to convene a meeting of the Board of Supervisors. In 42 years, I'm not sure I've ever had that happen before, but that we'll have 2 meetings going on at once in that regard. We'll get into more details about our work today, but I'd like to start with just for the panel members to introduce themselves, and then we'll hear our charge from the Secretary.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Kennedy, and I'm interim president at the Lynchburg Regional Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Sten Huja, and the mayor of City of Charlotte.
I'm Christina Hoffman, and I am the chairwoman of the Economic and Government Affairs Committee for the Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce, and also an attorney here in town in Charlottesville at Payne and Hodes.
And I'm Hal Duggan. I'm from Warrington. I'm listed on the contact list as mayor-elect. I'm not mayor-elect, although I'm the only one on the ballot. So.
We'll give him a special category.
Might be appointed.
I'm Jade Dittmar. I'm the chair of the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors and per FOIA requirements. And now joins us Liz Palmer, Diana McKeel, and Brad Sheffield back here with our county executive council, all in compliance with the law.
Chip Coleman, I'm mayor of Culpeper.
Kristen Sakis, I'm on City Council in Charlottesville.
Fred Shanks, I'm on City Council in Danville.
Trip Holler, I'm the director of the Planning Community Program for the Southern Environmental Center.
And I'm going to interrupt and say I'm actually here representing the Charlottesville area MPO. That's the chair.
Turner Pero, I'm a member of Lynchburg City Council and a consulting engineer, civil engineer.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you again for agreeing to serve on the panel. Before we go any further, Secretary of Transportation Aubrey Lane would like to spend just a few minutes with us, addressing us, and making sure we have a clear understanding of the panel's charge.
Thank you, Phil. First of all, just a little bit about myself. I think I'm in day 70-something of the new administration. I'd like to also say that Governor McAuliffe knows I'm here. He has approved this process and agrees with how we're going about to solve this. The governor campaigned on making good decisions and being used wisely, but solving decisions, solving problems, and making them going forward. That's one of the reasons why I decided that when I was asked to be Secretary of Transportation, that's something that I can really relate to. My background is in business and ran companies before. You had to use scarce resources, and every answer isn't the answer. But we are addressed to start making improvements of getting things further. But before I start, I want to read from you just a few sections of a JLAR, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, an independent body that I've done research on looking at this, and I'll come back to some of my issues about this on the CTV. I won't tell you when this report is dated until I finish. The issue of how to address traffic problems on Route 29 has been extremely controversial. In recent years, there have been strong divisions among various local citizen groups and between local governments in Charlottesville area regarding how to resolve transportation needs on Route 29. There's also been a tension between local transportation interests and regional and state interests, which has further complicated the situation. Over the last 20 years, VDOT and local officials have studied the issue of how to meet both local and regional transportation needs along this corridor. Extensive studies have been done how to best resolve the traffic congestion and mobility issues for throughput through Route 29. The study revealed that a combination of improvements would need to be undertaken in order to solve these issues. Based on these studies, these various studies, Commonwealth Transportation Board has adopted widening existing 29, constructing grades on 29, and considering a bypass in that. So it further goes on to say, to really meet the purpose and needs for projects and to evaluate what mode of transportation would fit them best, the process is not to pick projects, but to determine what is the best for mobility and congestion. If you go through this report over and over again, you can read about all the different things that we have studied, about the conflicting interests within the area, the state interest, the town south of here interest, the business owners' interest, the different things back and forth. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. But every time, each study proposed very similar solutions to the traffic problems in the area. Everyone came back to rounding 29 with limited access, constructing interchanges, constructing local routes, and considering a bypass. Not one of these individual projects was considered to be the answer. The answer was going to be a combination. Now, this report happened to be dated January the 1st, 1998. And here we are in 2014, and my experience is on the CTB, and we've lost one member over this because of political going back and forth. I voted for the bypass, not because I thought it was the answer, but we were starting to do something in one of the three suggested items. So it wasn't because I was overwhelmed that was the answer, but we were trying to do something. Now, that is not an option for us today. And there are those who say we can continue to fight and fight. There are 54 traffic lights that I think I counted when I rode the road up going north of here. The bypass gets past 14. It's not a matter of whether it is an environmental issue. We never got to that, by the way. The feds did not. You never got to environmental issues or any of that. It's just said that this proposed solution with the cost we were paying did not meet the purpose and need, did not get us the answer. It wasn't the answer. So if it would have been, I suspect I would have been in front of you talking about we're going to move forward because that would have been something to address it. But it didn't. So I'm not going to spend the next 4 years fighting it. I don't know if we'd be successful anyway. We have been studying this for 35 years. 35 years, and we've done nothing to address it. That can't go on, guys. I mean, it just can't go on. We're not going to come out of here with the answer. And I suspect nobody's going to like exactly what is done. Maybe we can, but I'm not looking for this to be everybody get together and hug and say we agree. But I am asking you to help us reach some common ground. Not specific projects. I mean, this is not a vote. We're not going to vote up or down. This is going to say, getting back to getting congestion mitigated and mobility through the quarter. What is our disposal? We have a couple $100 million, which, by the way, is a lot of money, but it won't solve all the problems. We could potentially have more if the right-of-way is not needed, and I'm not suggesting it is or it isn't. I don't want to preclude anything in that going forward. But we have that, and there's no sense saying we're going to study this. If we can't get something going substantially the next 4 years, I'm not going to kick it down the road anymore. We will be back here studying again. So I'm asking for your help and your guidance on how we can reach some common ground. Hopefully that's 4 or 5 different issues that we all agree on that are needed, that we can then run through the technical people and come up with a suggestion to take to the CTV board. Now, it may be that you come up with none. I hope that's not the case, but there's still going to be a technical analysis done to run through what are our options that we can move this project forward. I sure hope it's not zero. I hope it's quite a bit that we all agree that these are common threads, not particular projects, but common threads we need to accomplish, and this is what our exposure. This does not mean it's the final answer. I suspect we'll be going down the road with this, and I suspect sometime in the future, sometime a bypass is going to be on the table. But it probably won't be a 4 or 5 mile bypass. It will be a much larger bypass. And quite frankly, it'll be in the billions of dollars to get the bypass done based on. So it's not at our disposal today, but it's not never going to be considered. So just on the other hand, just like, we're going to have to consider some of the other things. So I ask for your cooperation. I think you guys have the best ability to try to reach what are some common core, some common ground, so that we can use that to get to the technical people and say, this is not the answer, but it's starting to address the answer, and we'll incrementally move it down the road. Unfortunately, I think that's where we are. And we find that this is not unique. This transportation issue is not unique. We have them similarly all around the state, where we have to look at how we can incrementally move it forward in that. So I'm asking for your help, plain and simple. I would like your help to help us come to some common ground. I don't agree. I don't think everybody's going to come out of here. I don't expect you all to say, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened. That's not what we're about. But we are about trying to fix those 2 things. Start addressing mobility through the quarter, which is very important, and congestion in the quarter, which is also very important. So with that, I've asked Philip Chouquette. I wanted an independent person, somebody that understood the issues, but was independent. This is not driven by VDOT. They're here. The RPT's here. The technical resources that will be here at the center will be available to us to run these through, all the technical stuff. But these answers are really about how to make our citizens' lives better. They're really not technical. We may have to have technical solutions, but what we really want to fix is mobility and congestion. So you don't have to be a traffic expert to understand that. But you do have to, have some indication that it's going to help. I don't want to just spend $200 million just to say we did something, but I don't think that is the case here. I think there are quite a few projects that will help. It may not fix it all, but it'll start addressing it, that we can then, in the future, continue to build on that. So, here's the other side of that. We tried everything else. so let's try this and see if we can. At the end of the day, we're all Virginians. We may have different needs, but we're all Virginians. My family lives in the Lynchburg area. I grew up on the farm, visiting my grandfather and Tyra on that. My son went to school here at the University of Virginia. I live in Hampton Roads, but I travel up and down. I've been the entire route of 29 many times. And I understand what people want for throughput. I understand what that means to commerce. I also understand what it means to congestion in this area. And there's a whole lot of emotions going on. Let's try to just stick to what we're really trying to accomplish. And hopefully we can come up with something that we can all start moving the ball down the field. But that's really what will get accomplished if we start this process. What is it? What is every great journey started with the first step? Guys, it's been 35 years. We've got to take the first step. So before I leave you, I will, if there's any particular questions that you have about the process or what your charge is, any resources Philip knows, he can call on the Secretariat, any of the organizations. My door is open. I told all the elected officials. I've let them know what this process is at the state level. And some are, I don't think anybody's overwhelmed because depending on where your point of view is, you really want one thing or the other. Unfortunately, that's really just not going to get us anywhere in that. But I want it to be, it is not a pre-gone conclusion. I have no idea what may come out. So there is no, I've heard people say, why don't we do this or why don't we do that? Well, let's figure out what our common ground is, and then we'll say what's the best recommendations we can make to at least start addressing that. Yes, sir.
Secretary Lane, is the charge just around Charlottesville, or does it include those 54 traffic lights, which I assume are between here and Gainesville?
Well, really, the immediate charge is the congestion through the immediate Charlottesville area. But I understand everyone north and south of here have interest in that, and in commerce. I understand that. But the immediate charge is for the metropolitan area that we have here is where the monies were dedicated for in that. I mean, that doesn't mean that out of this, some other considerations won't come to deal with that. But this is to keep the monies that we have obligated, they're not obligated, but that are here, that are reserved here. I would like to see them stay here and we start working towards that. And you heard the last CTD now, if you weren't there. There are plenty of people who would like to have this money. And House Bill 2 is going to require me to go through prioritization if we don't get something resolved. That's not a threat. It's just what we're dealing with across the state. So there's the governor's desire that we come up with something here that we all can. Again, you won't all be happy, but at least we can say we did what we could do based on the limited resources we have here.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Are you looking for solutions that can be started in the near future, or something long time, mid-term?
Well, it's going to be a combination. I put in there, we've got 4 years to get them started substantially. If it's a plan that stretches out past that, in other words, there's no magic that says cut off. But I didn't want you to think that we could sit here and say, come up and, there are some, quite frankly, that would prefer to do nothing, to keep stalling and keep stalling. That's not an option either. So that's
I'm not known for that.
Excuse me?
I'm not known for that.
Okay, I'm glad, because I'm not either in that regard. So that's why there's a time constraint. There is no reason with all this data that we have and all the studies that's been done that we can't come up with some suggestions. I mean, we're not starting over here. I mean, we have looked at this for 35 years, and this report could have been dated yesterday. And the problem's not going to get any easier to solve the longer we wait. It's going to be more expensive and more contentious the longer that we wait. And my guess is, as we start this, the ultimate thing that really fixes it, we haven't thought about. It won't become apparent until we begin the process. Something else will come out. I mean, other than if we just built a 20-mile road, or it's probably longer than that with the 54 lights all around, and that is just, we don't have the monies to do that now. Quite frankly, if that were looked at, it'd be a toll facility, because we simply don't have the monies to do that. And I don't think, I personally don't favor any tolling on 29. But if that was what we were looked at, I mean, we could have the P3 office look at it, but I don't think is not the answer in that. So, yes, sir, I would hope that there'd be some sense of urgency, not a gun to your head, but a sense of urgency to start moving this down the road and setting us up so that we can start getting the goods through here. And again, no preconceived notions, but how we can start moving this down in that, I guess, no pun intended, but we'd like to move down the road in that. Is there anything, other questions I could answer for you? Other meetings will be up to Philip, maybe here or other places in the quarter. We can talk about all that. No prescribed form, just trying to reach some common ground so we can make some good decisions, at least to start the process. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. Since you've got this group of folks here who are looking at the whole corridor, I know what our charge is for these meetings, but if things come out of these meetings that are sort of kind of advice or requests to the state for other things, like, for instance, train traffic, for freight, to get it off of 29, things like that we can't do with this money and that we don't control. Can we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I suspect that'll be a part of offshoot of this. I suspect it will be. But I don't want everything put off. I'd like, I really want, there's no doubt in my mind that there's at least 10 or 15 or maybe more projects. I can't believe one of them don't help us up. I mean, I'm not saying it in that regard. I mean, so let's take advantage of it, please. I'm really not here to admonish. I'm just saying, please, let's deal with this. Again, we're all Virginians. It's a very emotional issue, but let's please deal with it. I mean, at the last, not this CTB meeting, but the one before, if you would have listened to the discussion, not once were we talking about what was really the issue. We were all yelling at each other, screaming back and forth about why we didn't do this, or pejorative terms going on. Guys, that ain't going to fix it. We've been doing it for 35 years. Let's try to say, here's some common ground that we can move forward with. And that.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
As part of the charge, I know increased mobility and decreased congestion. Would that, include safety? I mean, safety.
Sure. Safety. We're not going to do anything that's unsafe.
Yeah. Well, increased safety.
Safety, right? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, inherently in the technical. I should say, after I talked to Virginia Beach yesterday, they may want to do another topic. But anyway, I was looking for the problem down in Virginia Beach, and that's a good question. I always thought that's the problem. But anyway, but no, safety would be considered in any of this on that. In that. Any other things? Well, thank you for having me. I really, truly appreciate your efforts to come. I know it's not going to be easy, and you're going to have people that are giving you a lot of different things. But I just ask you to stay with what you know to be accurate and try to leave the adjectives out of it. Because I have found, I have found that in transportation there's a lot of misinformation. And people it's like anything, you can take something, and we're dealing with this, and I'll get out of here, Philip, but we're dealing with this on how we plan in the state. Every year we plan that the traffic is going to increase 10 or 15, that's a lot, but a lot. Even the last 10 years it hadn't increased. But yet every year we put in our model it's going to increase, and so trying to bring just some common sense, some things to say, let's deal with what we know and work forward. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if Philip, if there's anything, or any of you can contact me, any support you need, any questions you need, if you think things aren't going, or not being objective, let us know, because that's what we want. But I think you have a great leader in Philip Shukat here, and I wish you the best, and I look forward to receiving your report in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
We invited the secretary to come and then invited him to leave.
That's right. That's the best meeting, right? That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, I think we've got we've got a pretty clear charge, which is good for us. No matter how you feel about any particular project, it's sort of good to know what our direction is. And I think we heard clearly kind of two phases. We want to stick within our charge to look at improving mobility through the Charlottesville 29 corridor. Other ideas that come out of this panel are going to be captured in a way that can be included in a report that we'll wrap up with and made available to the Secretary's office. I want to make three other introductions because I think there's three important folks for you to know. Four, actually. I'd like to recognize Miss Allison DeTonk, who is the Culpeper District member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Mr. Quentin Elliott, who is the Chief Deputy Commissioner at the Virginia Department of Transportation. Kevin Page, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And Mr. Ben Nell, who is going to serve as the technical team leader, and we'll get a real good idea of why that's a real important role here later on. As far as item 3 in our agenda, review the plan of action and the method of collecting public input. Our plan of action, as I laid out at the CTB meeting last week it was on the 17th, at least as I envisioned it, getting our time constraints, would be 3 advisory panel meetings. 3 because we don't have time for 4, I don't believe, if we're going to be able to do the technical work that needs to be done and get a report to the Secretary, to the Commonwealth Transportation Board in May. And we kind of lost a week in May because normally the CTB meets on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, except for the month of May, when they're meeting on the 2nd week. So that kind of screws down the time a little better. I don't know about you, I'm a fan of deadlines. They can be a real nuisance at times, but the absence of a deadline can be a bigger nuisance than anything I'm aware of. So it forces us to focus a bit. As far as collecting public input, the Secretary made it clear to me that it was important for this process to be transparent. At the same time, we're not holding public meetings. So the meetings are open to the public. They're being live streamed now over the internet. They'll be captured and made available as podcasts. If somebody wants to watch a rerun, you're happy to do it. I've already been contacted by folks who said they weren't able to come, they weren't able to watch it as far as being streamed today, but would they be able to watch a podcast of the meeting? And frankly, this one suggestion from this one lady, VDOT took that and ran with it and has developed a way that that a podcast will be available for the public, for anyone that wants to make comments on any aspect of our work. VDOT has established a website that went live this morning, Route29solutions.org. Route spelled out, Route29solutions.org. That'll be the place where you can find the podcast. It'll also be a place where there's a very simple form that I already tried out then. There's a simple form there that you can fill in and submit any comments that you would like, which Ben and his folks are going to be monitoring. And each time we have a meeting, we'll get a little update on the type of comments that have come in from the public. So at least in the 42 years that I've been doing this, I don't know of an effort that has been more available to the public as it's happening. Now, you know, some folks may wish that we were having a public meeting where everyone in the audience could make comments. Just going to have to ask your patience there because we're not doing it. But you have plenty of opportunity to get your comments in. And it'll be no secret who the 10 people are. So I'm sure you all will be visited at city council meetings or inside the chamber with your business community. And Mr. Dugan, I apologize for already electing you. But sounds like you got a pretty smooth sailing there. But we will fix that on our contact list. If you have any questions about or get any questions about the public's ability to make comments that you wish to refer to me, please feel free to do that because it's very important that folks know they have an opportunity to participate. I've took a stab at putting an agenda together that keeps us within about a 2-hour time frame for a couple of reasons. Your time is valuable. It's an effort to be here. 2 hours is enough time to do some good work. And if we're here 3 hours, we probably drifted off a little bit, perhaps, from our focus. Now, that's not to say that I'll stay here as long as you want to stay here. So that is fine. But again, I think it's important for us to have some general idea that we can work within. Today, I thought that 2 things were important if we could come out of it. One, I felt that it was important for us. I should introduce Susan. Susan Maines is going to save you from my handwriting, and we'll be kind of just capturing notes as we go along. The public is also able to see the notes. Is that right, Ken? The public is also able to see the notes as she is capturing them. We'll have them available so that we continue to build a record here as we work. And thank you, Susan, for doing that. 2 things that I felt were important for us to do today at this meeting. And that was to identify within our scope your views of some success factors. In other words, how will we know we did what the Secretary asked us to do? And in terms of defining those success factors, I think they should be whatever you think they are. We shouldn't judge them or say, oh, that's not a good one. That's not of interest. I think what of interest is knowing from the panel what your view of the success factor is. The second thing that I thought we would do following that, again, without judgment, is to hear from you what your idea of some solutions might be that address those success factors. And as I think I sent this note out to you all, Ms. Dittmar asked a great question. She said, well, how detailed do we need to be if we offer a solution? And the answer is, don't be any more detailed than you feel like being. We're not looking for someone to frame a solution in a way that is very specific. We're just, again, trying to capture the idea. We're going to feed those ideas to our technical team. We'll talk about that a little later. They're going to do a little bit of evaluation of those ideas, and that's where we'll pick up for our second meeting. So if that general game plan of identifying some success factors and then talking about some solutions that address those success factors sounds reasonable to you, that's what we'll do. Okay, well, Susan, let's flip the page and let's begin to capture some ideas of success factors that address the Secretary's charge. Somebody can start, or I can start somebody.
I'll start.
All right.
I don't know if this is a factor that would judge success or a factor that needs to help us with success. But there's a lot of data that doesn't match up in all the things that we try to look at. And so I think having a fact pack that is presented by what you might call an honest broker, which would maybe be your expertise team, like what are our traffic counts, what on cars, if we have come up with some solutions, what does that pull off of 29 or expedite from 29? So just facts that we can all rely on rather than, and make assumptions from, but it's the same set of facts.
So a basis of facts. Okay.
I have a second one.
All right.
Again, it may be a tool rather than a something that we would judge to be a success point. And that is, what are we trying to address here beyond the broader scope of enhanced mobility and reduced congestion? Are we trying to send through traffic through better? Or are we trying to help congestion locally? Or are we trying to do both? Mm-hmm. And how do we rank them? Are they equal value? Because some solutions will help one more than the other. So some parameters on the goal, the subset of the goal, would be good. And then, for me, then my mind can start looking at solutions.
Okay. Trying to think of how to write that down. But so you would like, well, would it be fair to say that a success factor might be the extent to which a solution improves through traffic, the extent to which a solution improves or doesn't disrupt local traffic? And we'll talk about this a little later when we get up to our technical team assignment. I think that will fit well. Does that capture okay the intent of what you were? All righty. How about somebody from here? Turner?
Thank you. Looking at solutions, I think we need to, what the Secretary clearly articulated was a short-term goal, something that could be implemented in 4 years. So, as a success factor, would be clearly defining a short-term solution. Secondly, we'll need to define a long-term plan so that we know what we can look forward to in the next 20, 30 years.
Okay.
So we can be on a path that way too.
Okay. So define what a short-term solution is, right? A definition for short-term?
Yeah.
Give Susan time to catch up. Is that good? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can we, I know we're not, but I don't want to get into discussion, I just want to clarify, when you say identify a long-term plan, we're not supposed to develop a long-term plan. That's, as I understand it, beyond the charge of this group.
We are not, we may offer things that suggest a long-term plan. That's right. Is that?
Yes, that's consistent. We've got to keep our eye on the long-term goals. And there are short-term strategies that can be implemented, but we've got to keep our eye on the ball.
Okay. Trip, that clarification good? All right.
Can I ask a question? By success factors, do we mean the end result when we submit our plan and it gets built, like what we would see as, okay, we did a good job at the end of this? Because my idea of success factors would be decreased drive times between me being all I need and a lower accident rate. I mean, those would be kind of keen in my mind as if we do a good job, that's hopefully what the result would be.
I think then we should capture that.
I think part of it is success of the process versus success of the outcome. of what we're doing. You know, in my mind, I think success is, I would like to leave here with some kind of confidence that the solutions that we spend time coming up with have a plan to get implemented.
Well,
Or we have a process by which we know if.
Well, let's talk about that process just for a little bit, kind of getting to the end, because that is what it's about. I mean, we're not here to staple together a few pieces of paper at the end that some other secretary can read from 30 years from now. So we're going, with your input, as the secretary said, it's not a vote or popularity contest, but with your input, we are going to prepare a set of recommendations that might be a group of projects. It may only be one thing, but we are going to go in May to the Commonwealth Transportation Board and say that from the result of the work that we did, with the input that we got from the advisory panel, here is a solution that can, one, be underway or substantially underway in 4 years and doesn't cost more than $200 million. Commonwealth Transportation Board may say, fine work, giddy up, let's go, or no thanks. I mean, so the process at the end, that I think is the success factor that you're talking about, is then when we make that presentation in May, our hope would be that it is accepted and that whatever pieces of that package fit within the Secretary's charge actually moves forward.
Can it be something that the public understands?
That would be helpful. Should be very clear.
Simple, but not...
Very simple. Very simple. Very simple. But the CTB, the Commonwealth Transportation Board, is the only body that can allocate the money to actually implement the solutions. So we've got decreased drive time, improved safety, underway within, well, that part of our charge. Right. Within very clear and simple, something that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Christine, but I think it's, a success factor would be a package that we believe has a merit to pass. Okay. Kristen?
I'd like,
Is it okay if I use your first name?
Yeah.
Okay.
my last name is hard to guess.
Mine's a little tricky.
I think when we, Jane was saying before that, the two goals of both local and through traffic. I agree with that, and I think we have to keep our eye on both of those things. I think we also have to do that with kind of realizing that 90% of the traffic from this part of the corridor is local, and so that we really focus a lot of our attention on helping that traffic move clearly, or either on frontage roads or in some, I won't start offering solutions, but in a way that then makes room for people to come through, rather than focusing only on the full length of traffic.
So is that sort of echo what she said then, that we have
Yes,
to be focused on both?
We have to be focused. If 90% of the traffic is local, we have to put a lot of our effort into looking at that as a solution. I also want to make sure that we kind of look at modern realities of people who don't want to be in cars, the next generations as they come up, making sure that we're reflecting kind of 21st century future, what we now know about what's coming.
So should we capture that as non-auto solutions, non-auto factors? Yeah. Okay.
The recognition that there are other pieces to it besides cars.
All right.
To offer maybe a slight refinement on, I think Christina had an excellent point about reducing or improving safety and reducing safety problems. And maybe as part, I think that should be the overall objective, but as part of that, maybe focusing on reducing crashes at the points with the highest accident rates. I think there are, at least, and this gets back to the earlier point that Jay made about inconsistent data, but based on data in the past, there seem to be some places that are much worse than others.
Okay.
So I would hope if we could especially improve safety by focusing on the places with the highest.
Oh, okay, and we should capture that in this basis of facts also, so you have a basis of
Right.
facts.
And
All
then,
right.
picking up on Kristen's point about other modes, also I think under safety is providing safe pedestrian crossings and accessibility in corners.
Okay. Pardon?
You can ask the speakers to speak up a little bit, especially the folks in the back, towards the back of the panel, so the microphone will pick up. Thank you.
We'll do our best.
Thank you.
Screen, if you're sitting back here. Okay, thank you, Lou. Thank you. Other ideas of success factors, Mayor?
We can agree to something practical.
Something practical?
This is a little tangential, but it's a question that with all the talk about the bypass, is it accepted that really 90% of the traffic is local traffic that goes through there? Is that?
And someone can correct me if I speak out of turn, but from the data I've reviewed and recall from the past and reviewed in the last several weeks, say 85 might be a little closer to the number, but the through traffic is around 12 to 15%. It gets a little higher at the northern end, as you would expect it to be, but the majority of the traffic in the corridor that we're focused on is local traffic. Ben, is that?
Yes, sir.
Great. Yes, sir.
Put that in our facts thing too.
The basis facts thing, I think, will be fairly easy for us to pull together. And then I'm thinking that we should pull that together and get these folks. We don't need to wait for the next meeting to have that basis fact.
Do you have any figures on outside of the area commuters?
From your OD study?
Commuters?
We do. Can we include all that in that package? Yeah.
Some of the things that I've heard so far, well, some of that is in conflict. When you talk about through traffic versus local traffic, that's a natural conflict in this type of work. So I think as one of our success factors, we want to be able to make sure that we improve flow from Southern Virginia to Northern Virginia or vice versa. If we have not improved the traffic flow for through traffic, then we haven't succeeded.
Okay. Okay.
Albert, I think that is a good point. In one way, maybe of slightly refining talking about congestion that might help us to get it, because I think a number of improvements actually do both the through traffic and local traffic. One is that we look at to the extent to which the solutions reduce average delay at the most congested intersections, where the bottlenecks are.
Okay, so define the bottleneck.
As a subset of looking at,
Right.
congestion relief is a big concept.
Yeah.
The way I think that can help us maybe focus in on solutions and whether we're getting the job done for everybody is looking at the worst, are we relieving the worst problem?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we pick up a few seconds here or there and we don't address the
Yeah,
bottlenecks. I don't think that's going to help.
Susan, I kind of like the way Tripp said it because it's clear and simple. Are we relieving the worst problems? Let's write that. We can leave that, but write that down too, because that means we know what the worst problem is, and we know if we're relieving or not.
I think one thing could help, one criteria could be, you're switching for traffic lights. You're not going to move very well, you keep on having 54. This is reducing the number of traffic lights, in my mind, can help out.
Reducing the number of traffic lights.
Yeah.
Would that be a success factor or a possible solution?
I think it will be a success.
Well, okay.
Now you have to start at 54 points. That means that you can have other solutions like traffic signals, other ways of dealing with traffic.
Okay. Okay.
Something that's maybe less as a success factor, but gets back to kind of, when Christina asked us of the secretary, it made me think about, there are some he said, well, improving safety is kind of something we take for granted. So there are some things that maybe they're kind of, you mentioned some kind of ground assumptions. So for example, to the extent, I'm not sure it's a measure of success, but that as we look at these things, we also keep an eye on, for example, congestion relief per dollar spent. So if you get a little bit of relief, but you're spending most of that $200 million on one project versus, say, you get more relief. So somewhere in there, just that sense of
Bang for the buck.
bang for the buck. Exactly.
Okay, why don't we write down bang for the buck?
It's not really a success.
I'll remember that.
No, I got it, but it's a guiding.
Sure. No, I got you.
And
I got you.
another one I'd like to put in is to minimize adverse environmental impacts. So if you have two solutions that offer the same congestion relief, but one would have much greater impact, say, on water quality in crossing the river, I hope we would go with
Sure. Some what I chose not to do today was bring, you'll see the only thing we have is a map with roads on it, with street names on it. As opposed to maps with environmental constraints and all these, left to our own devices, we would have filled this room with maps that would not have been simple and probably confuse things. But Trip and panel members and public, as we look at these success factors and the solution, whatever initial concepts we think about today, our technical team is going to have to push those through some exercises to look at how well they work, how much they cost, and what are the potential impacts. So we'll definitely be getting that type of screening. Now, some folks say, well, there's no way you can do that in 2 months. Well, you can do a lot in 2 months if you put your mind to it. We're not data shy here. We have enough data to clog our minds for a long time. The trick is to reach into it and pull out some knowledge and say, this is what that means. So Trip will definitely be doing those kinds of assessments.
As we're talking about impacts on safety and on all the environment, I think we also need to make sure that we're paying attention to the impact on businesses along 29. I know Albemarle County is a key piece of their economic center, and for the city, it's also a relatively large piece of our economic.
I think in the kind of the traditional transportation planning scheme, you can expect to see social, economic, and environmental impacts at a high level. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
We heard the Secretary talk about, 1998
Yeah.
report, but surely something's been done since then. I mean, you've probably tried synchronization of lights and things here and there. If you could identify what's worked and maybe implement that someplace else or come up with something new that hasn't been tried, that would be a success factor for those committees.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that.
Okay.
I was kind of waiting for someone to say that. Where are we going in the future with transportation and all these ideas, state-of-the-arts that we may not necessarily know about or have only heard about? How do we infect this process with those ideas?
Well, I think how do we infect the process? I think we can certainly talk about, I'm thinking about what Turner said in terms of looking long range and what Kristen said about, well, what if we have some idea about rail traffic? That when we talk about the possibility of new technologies or new applications, we first see, well, is that available to us within, our schedule and budget? If it is, then we can develop it a little further. We can see if we can develop it a little further. If it's the anticipation of some new technology that might be developed in a 15-year horizon, then we might have to package that more into here's some considerations we'd like you to keep in mind for the long term. So I just think consideration, our two parts was consideration of what's worked before, regardless of where it's worked before, And can it be applied in this quarter? And then was that fair to say? I mean, if something's worked before that fits what we're trying to do, we don't care if it was in Wyoming or, right, we want to know about it. And then consideration of longer-term technologies, new technologies?
Innovative trends.
Innovative technologies?
I think potential additional measure of success would be if we can keep the big picture in mind and make sure that the solutions we offer work well together and don't have any unintended negative other consequences we might not think through.
Long-term.
Okay.
So that whatever we do short-term has long-term benefits.
Okay, short-term actions have long-term benefits. Is that fair?
But especially don't get in the way of them.
Right. Don't step on our own toes.
That's never happened.
I'm never.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Tonk, any thoughts?
I think that's all great.
Quentin or Kevin, are there any things you want us, from your responsibility point of view, you want us to write a here?
No, I think we've captured that. And what I would say, probably what would happen is we start going to solutions. Solutions may lead us back to some other success factors.
Definitely. Kevin?
Well, I want to point out to the group that this is the 29 corridor. It's a transportation network. It's a system of multiple networks in a corridor that includes multi-modes of transportation. So, in understanding that, I've heard a lot of conversation about congestion and relief of that, but there's some inherent principles there of through traffic, local traffic, pulsated traffic, and also congestion brought about by a combination of all. So this is what we can do about. I'm hearing all the right essence of, it's certainly a pot full of succotash here of transportation issues, but you know what? It tastes pretty good in the end if we get it all put together.
Yeah. Okay.
Making me hungry.
How about we just run through these kind of quick? Is somebody making sure we're not getting ourselves in trouble with the fire marshal? They're pretty serious dudes. I just don't want them to come here all the time, as they should be. Okay. So we've got the issue of, look, let's put together kind of a basis, a score sheet, a basis of facts that will help us, help keep us consistent with our facts through the process, and that is an excellent idea and something we will do. Then it was mentioned the extent to which we improve local traffic, the extent to which we improve through traffic. And we may have said that a couple of ways, a couple of different times. What is a short-term solution? And, I'm kind of thinking that could be not a short-term solution may fit our window, but may only work for 6 years before it's overtaken by events. I mean, those are the types of things. Okay, and then we should keep in mind that we do have an opportunity to identify some long-term strategies. Reduce drive time, improve safety. We've got our schedule and budget there that's part of our charge. We want to make sure that we're able to articulate possible solutions in a clear and simple manner, that our package has merit so that at the end of this, there's some expectation that something will get implemented. I think that's a real good one. Reflect non-auto modes, and maybe that gets a little to what Kevin Page was just saying in terms of making sure that all of this fits together at the end, whether it's auto, truck, pedestrian, biking, whatever you may have it. Focus, we want to know where the high accident locations are so we know whether or not we're focusing on them, or we should focus on them. safe bed crossings, practical solutions, Mayor Huja mentioned, well, again, improve traffic flow through the corridor, identify the key bottlenecks and see if our solutions possibly address those. Are we relieving the worst problems? Can a solution help reduce the number of traffic signals? Bang for the buck, kind of congestion relief per dollar, I think is the way Tripp said it. A solution, I guess, we need to be mindful of the potential socioeconomic and environmental impacts of our alternatives, not only on the environment, but business and communities. Now Susan's put that other M in there. We should make consideration of things that have worked before for similar type situations, if you know what those are, but also consider innovative or upcoming technologies, and then take note that our short-term actions don't produce long-term effects, or I think Kristen said at least don't interfere with them. Now that's a pretty good list, and you could say, well, gee, some of those are really not success factors, some of those are really kind of maybe objectives, maybe some of them really are indicators of performance. My point of view about that is really at this stage, who cares? I don't think we should try, would be my suggestion, that we don't try to now pick apart the list and say, oh, geez, that's not good, or let's change that wording. I think we should stick with that because it's going to get some more objective look from our technical folks who will take those success factors and say, here's a group of what we heard that we think can be evaluated or measured. Here's some that maybe the group would say might be pretty tough to evaluate and measure. And they may even say that here's one, we're not sure why you wrote it on the paper, but we can't figure it out. So we can sharpen this a little bit, is what I'm saying. What I'd like for us to do, one, if you want to take a brief break, if somebody needs to, we can do that. I like to just keep rolling though, and do a similar exercise to capture some potential solutions. And again, reminding you that you can be as detailed as you wish to be or as general as you wish to be. The important thing, I believe, is to get it from your head, however it's rolling around in there, onto the paper. So I don't want anybody to feel inhibited.
I guess I'll start one. I notice we have a Western bypass right away. A great place to have a rapid transit, bus transit, and bike lane on that alone. Because you already have right away and cruise bus.
So you use the Western bypass right of way for
transit and bike.
For transit and bike. Who's going to go next? Fred?
And maybe I'm getting too far into the details, but I just like.
I know we've got a couple PEs here. When I say no details, I don't mean a different thing to you all.
Fewer than 20 pages.
You get as detailed as you want.
And you know, I haven't looked at it from the local perspective, so I don't want to upset it. But is there a possibility that the solution would include removal or minimizing the left turns, creating inside or medium-sized through lanes with limited number of delays, and creating use of right turns and overpasses to get people from inside to the other?
Okay, let her catch up with those. Minimize
Minimize
left turn.
left turn.
Left turns. Minimize left turns.
Attempt to use the interior lanes or the medium-sized lanes. That's two more. For through traffic with limited delays, maybe no delays.
So use the interior lanes or the median, but new lanes, right?
Medium.
Right.
Fred, could I add on to that? Because
Sure.
I was thinking the exact same thing. And just, if you're trying to pass the traffic, it's exactly what he's talking about, left-hand through lanes, eliminating left-hand turn movement.
Uh-huh.
Putting in jug handles or something similar. Jug handles is an easy one to write down.
I don't know what
Right.
that is.
That is you take a right to go left. So you pass around the loop of the jug to go straight through the intersection.
And may I,
Yeah,
just
please.
on that particular point, if
Now, does anybody know who the 2P is?
along those exact points, I don't know whether the budget would permit, but some of those would not be graded. At grade, they'd be over.
Okay. Let's let Susan catch up just a little bit. By minimize left turns, use interior lanes. Why don't we, let's make a separate for that. Use interior lanes for through traffic. Build new median lanes for through traffic. And then we have the constructed jug handle could be part of that.
And then the separated grade crossings, I think is also what it is.
And I know that are people able to read that pretty easily, you think, for the most part? When we're not standing in front of it? Okay. Why don't you flip the page there, Susan? Well, let's just go. Use Western Bypass right away for transit, for bike head. Minimize left turns. Use interior lanes for through traffic. Build new median lanes for through traffic. Consider jug handles to eliminate left turns. Should we say that with or without grade separated?
A combination.
Combination. Okay.
Preferably with grade separated.
I understand.
So the MPO, before the Western Bypass went through 2 years ago, had a lot of things that we're doing. So I'm just going to kind of name a couple of those
Uh-huh.
that are already sort of researched and designed and in the plan.
Okay. Let's just kind of pace it so we can get Susan to write it down there.
But just as I start, just things that are, to move up in time.
Uh-huh.
That are kind of already in the plans.
Okay. So these are ideas that have already been developed. Okay.
So one is to just expand the parallel road network, which includes Hillsdale Drive and Birthmark extended.
Those are the two parallels on either side?
There's some other pieces, but
Yeah,
that stands in for on both the western and eastern side.
All righty.
Hillsville and
Birthmark.
Perkmar. Hillsdale. Oh, sorry.
You went down Route 58 on us there for a minute.
Synchronization of lights with the kind of new kind of synchronization that actually uses both synchronization on the corridor itself, but also on the side roads, back and intersections too. And I think that to do that a little beyond where 29 turns into the city probably would keep backup from happening. So
To do that a little beyond
beyond the intersection of 250.
Of 250, okay.
So from, all the way from, from the county line basically down through to
Okay.
the beginning of the city. Another is transit. Not quite bus rapid transit, but as I've been calling it, bus pretty quick transit.
That's like almost high-speed rail. Okay,
Higher.
slower, well, yeah, higher-speed rail, that's right. Okay, so almost.
Stops that would get people with, kind of an express system, express buses through the.
Oh, okay, sure.
Let's see what else. And just full funding for things like the intersection at 250, and the widening that's already in the plan.
The interchange at 250, is that what you mean, or?
The turning right to go south and north.
That's by.
Okay.
I wasn't sure that's.
Fund
what
the
it's
Best
called.
Buy ramp. Yeah. That's our technical term.
Yeah.
Okay,
God forbid if Best Buy shouldn't be there, but
Okay.
I know what it is.
all right.
And I actually want to just make sure that when we start talking about graded, separated interchanges, and I know that that's something that comes up a lot, and it's something that we don't have agreement in our own community exactly on, but we have to really pay attention to the businesses at those intersections because it's huge impacts on them. And I think in the short-term piece, that could really hang us up, and I would like to see us looking for other alternatives that will smooth traffic through short of that.
Well, okay, we'll kind of reserve our judgment for a meeting down the road, but I hear you.
I would
Understand?
say potentially the expansions of the lanes between basically where Walmart is, Brown's, that area, all the way through to Hollymead.
That's
Make it
one of
west.
the-
That's,
that's
okay.
widening, yeah.
I don't know if it got on there.
Oh, it did.
It did,
That's not
yeah.
on there, that's right.
Widening 29 north of Walmart.
I heard you say that, but I wasn't sure if that was you referring to or not, so.
And I think the straightening has also been funded, so that piece we don't look at. Push that forward.
In our basis of facts, we ought to include projects in the corridor that have already been funded in the 6-year plan.
But you moved
Yeah,
up
yeah,
30 years.
and that's what I wanted to say, Adam, is I think it's really important to get all those out, because although from some perspective, some things have not moved forward in that quarter, there has been a lot of projects that are actually in the pipeline and are about ready to go, some of which are fully funded in the current 6-year plan. And so I think, and I would hope that we could all agree on some of that low-hanging fruit. But the other reason I put this out there is when we think about the $200 million, that should not include some of these things that are actually already funded elsewhere.
It does not.
I think
Unless I misunderstood the Secretary terribly, it does not.
Right.
In other words, the things that are in the 6-year plan are improvements in the 6-year plan, and we're not here.
And I know we're not
to-
supposed
yeah.
to discuss each thing, but I do want to say that if we do look at things that are like in year 5 and 6, which is outside the window of our recommendations today, they are in our short-term plan. And so to move those up while replacing the funding for the next phase of things would make sense, even with this money.
Okay, well, let's get the list so that we all understand what is on it, what the project is, and what funding has been allocated to it within the current 6-year plan.
Well, I'd like to make sure we're not excluding projects that are approved or under study that haven't been funded, because I think some of those are not.
Yeah.
So we have, a lot of these have been studied.
Right.
Or are in some form of the approval process without any,
Look,
not even a dollar.
I think if the ones that are in the 6-year plan represent a group of approved projects that have been allocated funding, we should know what those are, but then we're working on projects that, additional solutions, so we're not going to say, well, you've got $200 million, but we've already spent $100 million.
Right, exactly. Not to replace that.
We're not doing it.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, and we do need to think about things that we could maybe separate, but also some of those that are in the 6-year plan are actually only partially funded, or they come with some assumptions. So we want to be clear on that, because some of them, although they're in there and there is some funding in there, I think some of that $200 million might need to be added to the pot to finish them in a timely fashion.
No, I got you on that.
Yeah, I want to make sure we don't.
Yeah, we can differentiate.
Staff can put that in, like where they are in the process.
We can differentiate for you what's in the 6-year plan, what's fully funded, and what has not been. What has not been fully funded, how much has been funded, and what the balance is. That,
And what also fits the scope of our charge. In other words, is it going to fall within, I want to make sure we use the money for, we protect the 200 million for improving the mobility and reducing
those,
on that piece of the,
that,
because there might be other.
that'll be part of other discussions we'll have. I hear you. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Susan, you have all that down? Dan, you know what we're talking about, conversation.
Before we move
Jane.
on from Kristen's idea about synchronized signals, I live in a different part of the community, and we had a whole bottleneck on 250 going from Louisa into town, and our lights were synchronized this past year. I cannot believe how the flow has improved. The first couple of times I thought, this is luck. I mean, boy, am I having a good day. And then I realized this is what these things do. Traffic lights along 29 are very old, and so introducing these new technologies, I think.
It's not really synchronization, it's this computerized system that actually reads who's at the intersection and can do this interactive real-time changing of signals.
Yeah, we're going to be we'll be able to investigate that and talk to you about that very, very well. Herm?
Thanks, and in fact, we've implemented that same solution on Ward's Road in Lynchburg, and that has worked well, but that certainly is what I would consider a short-term solution. It's cheap, relatively, it's not $200 million, it's probably about 10, and it's short-term. But we need to really begin with the end in mind, and we need to look towards the long-term solution also, is what we've identified as a potential goal. Can we earmark some of these funds for the long-term 29 corridor study? I don't think, I was kind of asking these guys if it ever got fully funded, but we need to understand how we can fix the long-term traffic solutions along Route 29 from Gainesville to Danville. And there have been in the past, I was talking about funding for that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, I really think that if we're going to spend $200 million in Charlottesville, that at least 5% of that could be earmarked for a long-term study.
Well, I think we should write down, earmark some funds for a long-term study.
What we can do first is we'll pull out all the other long-term studies we've done. We've actually studied this corridor back in 2003, 2004
Right.
timeframe, and then more recently we did some other studies. So we'll pull them out, look at them, and make those available to you. If we need to refresh them, we could do that.
But none of them are jointed. They're all segments. Right?
No, we would say.
Well, let's do what Quentin said. Let's get what we have. So back to your first point, so we know what we have. We don't think we know what we have, but we know what we have, and we'll know how timely they are, how current they are. But if that's a solution this group would want to consider and put forward, let's keep it, let's hold it up there. I thought I saw hands, but maybe. What? Trip?
This is partly what I think the turning movement, the left turns, gets at somewhat, but just more broadly looking at other things we can do for access management in the corridor. I think there's some other possibilities that have been studied in the past.
VDOT has an access management policy, so review that with respect to the corridor, or
other opportunities, because I know we have studied it at different over the years. What are some additional things you can do? And it wasn't just limited to cutting down on left turn movements. But that's certainly a
Okay. Access management options.
Other additional.
Access.
I think if you were to look at those policies that we don't have in place now, all of the problems that we're dealing with wouldn't be here.
Well,
because it's frontage roads, it's all, it's
Right.
all set out there what the policy should be.
In relative terms, those policies are new. The General Assembly actually passed a law requiring VDOT to develop, I've had occasion to look at these very recently for another project, required VDOT to develop regulations for access management, which they did just in the last 5 years, I think. So, okay. Yes, sir, Mayor.
In some fashion, if we can extend Royal Road to 250, it'll help the traffic on 29 also growing. If we can extend the Royal Road to 250 in some fashion, that
Okay.
will take away some of the traffic which is going through the 29 now.
Extend Ryle Road to 250.
You mean like the Eastern
So that Eastern
Connector?
Connector?
So, yeah.
Okay. So I think what he's saying is across, not down Ryle Road into the city, but across
Yeah.
20, across 220, just right Eastern Connector.
Okay.
And actually, I would be interested if we were earmarking money for long-term studies to include the Eastern Connector idea as part of that kind of, that's been in those long-term studies, but just make sure that that's still. And that may be getting at some of that.
So that would tie into the Mayor Hooch's, right?
It might.
Okay.
Can I go back to something Fred said?
Absolutely.
I was just looking at my list of ideas, and can you go back to the beginning sheet for solutions? Okay, this minimizing of interior lanes, is that like an express lanes that would be dedicated to traffic?
That would be my hope, is it could be an express lane, but
Yeah, I think that's
it
an
may be
interesting
limited to some stoppage, but I would hope it would be express lane.
And it would have limited ability to get on and off it, get on it further north and.
The way I heard what Fred said was either take a lane, an existing lane, and dedicate it to that, or construct a new express lane in a median that would serve that purpose.
All paying attention to pedestrians and other.
Yes.
And that goes back to that non-upgrade.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you, I just wanted to.
Does that,
And I'm
Christine?
not an engineer, so this, when you talk about pedestrian, I hear you because I'm thinking if a truck is going 55 miles an hour, that's not gonna work. Are you considering under the highway, over the highway for pedestrian? Because that's what we did on Ward's Road to fix that, because it's not gonna work if you have pedestrians trying to
You've got to
go.
have some above grade.
Okay, but I would like that, as long as there's some understanding that that would be an idea for eliminating the pedestrian and the bikeway.
that would be an idea for eliminating.
I mean, not on the main road.
Oh, okay.
Basically,
Yes.
when you have a throughway, there's really not room for pedestrian
That's right.
or bikes. It's a safety hazard.
Right.
It's an
That's
absolute
right.
So it needs to be above or underneath the
Right.
through road, is what I'm getting at.
So bike paths need to be separated from any
Yeah.
through expressway.
Yeah.
Well, it may not necessarily be grade separate, they just need to be separated.
Yeah, and could we maybe just broaden that point?
Sure.
Just be that we have like accommodations in these various projects, because I mean, there's one issue about the grade separations and getting across the land, but also things like Burkmar, if that gets built,
Yeah.
we want that to be part of it, is getting back to Chris's initial point about the non-vehicular traffic.
Okay, sure. All right. Did that capture what you wanted to say, Christina?
I was thinking along the lines of, someone mentioning we could do a bike route along the bypass since we already own that land.
Meredith just mentioned
Which
that.
is, I think, a very good idea. I think one of the concerns we need to pay attention to is whether or not we really want to encourage pedestrian traffic close to 29 as it is. I mean, I think it's relatively dangerous now, and whatever we do, let's not, put people in harm's way. It's not super pedestrian friendly now. You see people running across that intersections every once in a while, and the speed limit is 45. So just whatever we do, make sure it's safe. And a bike route along the bypass route might be a good idea to keep it safer and separate. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want us to capture something there, or I think it's there. Tripp, did you?
One thing that actually someone mentioned very early on when we were talking about what was within the parameters, and I didn't want it to get lost. I don't think it fits within what you spend the $200 million on within 4 years, but the idea of freight rail improvements along the corridor to get some.
Kristen mentioned that.
Either along that corridor or along 81.
Yeah, and another, which one on, but the other one that actually is in that previous, it's the 2009-2010 study that did look at the entire corridor. Another one for this region that was mentioned that we've made some movement on, but we need to do a lot more on, is passenger rail from DC to Charlottesville to Lynchburg. Increasing the frequency of that would help it play more of a role in actually reducing congestion on 29. Right now, it's not a great tool for congestion reduction because it's only
Long time a day.
long time a day. But if we add additional trains, it becomes more meaningful, and that's actually recognized in that study that VDOT did several years ago.
Okay. So increased frequency of passenger rail. You want to increase frequency and add capacity, or it just increased frequency?
You said a second train it'll have capacity.
Yeah.
Well, that's right, true, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say second train? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need a second and third train.
Yeah.
Have there been any, and this may be a question for the technical team, maybe we put this in the fact pack, have there been any studies on what the percentage will be of if we increase the frequency of passenger rail and if we put more freight rail?
We'll have to ask Kevin.
I'm sorry, what'd you say again, Phil? I'm trying to follow what you're saying. If you had a second train, it's about another 479 people per trip. And we're filling the train now at almost over 100% capacity.
And what about studies for if we increase the freight rail possibility? Has there been any?
We've actually, Department of Rail and Public Transportation has been working with Norfolk Southern, which is the primary rail operator through the area. You literally, this corridor sits on the Crescent Corridor, which takes traffic all the way from Latin America all the way to the Northeast. So you have what I refer to as network noise. You have a lot of through truck traffic that could potentially be picked up and short hauled up that network. Whether it be intercepted at Lynchburg or somewhere south, for example, Crescent Corridor trains could potentially pick up traffic in Knoxville, Tennessee that could ultimately have ended up somewhere along the 29 corridor that would have had to have been trucked from either Knoxville or trucked from the Virginia and Fort down the corridor if you had a location. Say similarly, Lynchburg is where the Heartland Corridor and the Crescent Corridor actually cross. Very similar to the ideology and the methodology we've used for the Roanoke Intermodal Facility is that it's on both corridors. That's a kind of a rare event in two locations in Virginia, one in Lynchburg and one in Roanoke, where those corridors cross. One is east-west global gateway business coming from the Port of Virginia, and the other one is the domestic trade route, which is Crescent Corridor.
So we do have information that we would be able to.
We've studied that and we know how much traffic that would reduce off of
We have an understanding of how many containers move off that corridor. Now, how much of it is origin destination driven in the 29 corridor?
So that may be something we.
Ben is going to talk to Kevin.
Some study on will it really reduce the impact on.
Right.
I think more parking and ride facilities could reduce the congestion on 29 corridor.
Park and ride.
More parking and ride. More
park and
parking and ride facilities.
the fact basis ought to tell us how many of those we have now. Okay.
I'm not sure if this is a success factor or a solution. I think it's probably more of a success factor. But we need to make sure that we identify what is a regional and a state solution versus what's a local solution. Meaning, local solutions should probably be funded on a local basis with local revenue, with VDOT local revenue sharing funds if appropriated. The $200 million.
87% of the traffic on this is local. If we can get that local traffic off, it makes.
The $200,000 is a bypass fund dedicated to move through traffic around. We need to make sure that the $200 million stays focused on through traffic around.
I'm not sure we'll have agreement around the table about that.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a few points that we don't have agreement on, but we want to capture. I think that goes on our first list.
Probably does.
As a success factor. If you can squeeze it in there, Susan. Or just capture it on another piece of paper, but remember to add it on.
And that was what you said before.
Okay, so
No, it's specifying that state monies need to be focused for state solutions. Regional monies for regional, or excuse me, local monies for local solutions.
Let's stay with that for a minute. And because I like what you're saying. What you're saying is that we have pots of money to go for specific things. But the only thing that I'm tripping up on is our charges to do something that isn't one or the other. It's to satisfy the needs of both. And that comes to that second question I had as far as how do we measure success. Kristen, what I heard you say is, well, we've got to have some local solutions to draw or move, and then that solves the. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we work through this to satisfy this charge, but honor the intent of monies, et cetera.
Oh, I think that's a good point, Jane. And it's certainly not a clearly defined line. What raised flags in my mind is having a pedestrian or or a short rail corridor on the bypass route doesn't seem to really to improve through traffic flow on Business 29 right now. So that's where I'm making judgment calls with that.
I think you're right. If we were talking move the traffic from 29 corridor right now, by transit, you reduce traffic, you try to move better.
For today, we're capturing these thoughts. There's going to be competing thoughts. If there weren't any disagreement, we'd be here talking about something else. There's going to be disagreement. Like any good negotiation, probably everybody's going to walk away feeling a little pinched. We just don't. We're just not there. We're just not there yet. We'll talk about this in a little bit when we get to the technical team assignment, because they're going to be doing something that will help us draw a little sharper bead on what I believe you're talking about, in a way that we don't lose any of the work we've done. It's one thing I heard clearly on the 17th from the CTB was that while your panel is going to be bringing back recommendations that meet the charge, the CTB is interested in the broad universe of what's on this panel's mind. So there might be things that don't fit neatly into our charge that are important issues that the CTB will, and the Secretary and the Department of Transportation and Rail, Public Transportation, will continue to talk about. Your communities, the Board of Supervisors, the towns that are represented here, aren't going to stop talking about transportation when we finish in 2 months. So, any other Feel like that's a pretty good handful right now? Fred?
Going back,
'Cause remember, it doesn't matter what it is if you want to get it out of there.
well, I want to go back.
Fred wants to get on. Okay, you don't, all right.
And
Turning movement.
I'm not sure, no, getting back to what Turner just,
Oh, Turner said, okay, I'm sorry.
it would be helpful for me, and I realize our charge is somewhat different.
It's all right.
This panel's charge.
Uh-huh.
It would be helpful for me if there was a synopsis of the original intent of the bypass. There had to be some justification papers, and just so we can all become familiar with the original purpose of the bypass. And I just think it would be, I know we're going to have disagreement.
Right.
I hope it's not much, but it would be helpful just to know what that original intent was.
Can I ask you to, because I am trying to think about, some disagreement avoidance.
Okay, I hear you, and
But rather than the intent of the bypass, could we perhaps have a little briefing on the description of the problem? Would that be okay?
I think you almost heard most of that in the introduction.
Yeah, I think you did.
So,
Yeah.
if that's not a suitable inclusion in this, I'm comfortable with that. I think we've got the answer to what you just said, and I'm comfortable
Okay.
hearing that.
Okay.
I have another clarifying question. Are we, is our intent to keep the 200 million within this original intent of use of that money?
The secretary's, I won't even say preference, the secretary's charge to us is for the solutions that are developed within the Charlottesville Route 29 corridor remain within a budget of $200 million.
And that it served to relieve congestion and increase flow on this, on the.
Yes, yes.
I guess my question was, there was a comment about the $200 million was to fund and move through traffic around Charlottesville. But if that is not the case, I mean, if that wasn't the intent of the 200 million, I think.
We are not trying to necessarily come up with some other set of solutions that meets the intent of the bypass. There was money, there was about $200 million allocated to a project that we're not going to consider for building. So we can use that money to improve through traffic, at least without disrupting local traffic in the Charlottesville Route 29 corridor, or the money will be up for grabs for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to allocate to other areas. The first question that was asked, the very first question that was asked on March 17th was, can we use that money somewhere else? I mean, now the answer is yes, if that's what the CTB decides to do, and that's not that's not necessarily hanging over our head, but it means we have an opportunity to use it here in a way that makes the existing situation for through traffic and local traffic better than it is today. Kristen had her hand up first. Christine.
I think that that's actually when you were saying you were looking for a way, kind of conflict avoidance or at least conflict reduction, I think that that's really important because we all have different interests in this, but our interest that we all have is the 29 work better. And I think that if we can't work together to realize that, the money will go somewhere else. And so I think that we need to figure out where there are really hot touch points and things that we try to work well together so that we can get through with something that is going to work for all of us. It may not be what we all wanted or, the best thing.
Kind of swim together, sink
Swim together or sink together, yeah.
Christine?
On the same note, I was thinking, some of these are local-based improvements, meaning they would happen here, but anything we do to get local traffic off 29 and congestion minimized will help the through traffic. I mean, I drive all the time down 29. I know how bad it is. My family and my boyfriend live in Northern Virginia. I'm on that all the time, so I get it. But anything we do to help local traffic is going to it will help through traffic. I mean, it just will. If we can get people off or if we can get people moving faster, it's just going to make everybody's situation better, even if the improvements are actually taking place in the Charlottesville area. So.
Yes, sir.
Really, we've got a pretty good set of answers here, because you've got a pretty small, there are only really two solutions to increase mobility and decrease congestion, and that is to add capacity and separate traffic. So I think we've pretty well defined.
Well, and reduce volume.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Do we want to read through this list like we did success factors? No. I hear we have a no. In the absence of a undying yes, we could move on then with what I view as the charge to the technical team. And this will be a little repetition from the presentation that I sent to you and what we presented to the CTB on March 17th. The technical team, then, is, first of all, going to need to take that list of success factors as they were stated, and as you heard the conversation, and as you can go back and re-listen to the conversation if need be, and sharpen those up and bring a little consistency to them in the way you present them, and tell us which ones you believe can be measured and how you would do that. Okay? Now, not in a term paper, but in pretty straight, simple language. You then look at the solutions that we've mentioned here, and among the technical team, we're going to have to let them maybe sharpen those up a little bit as well, or do some imagining on their own, which they'll need to tell us how they did that, put some definition to them. We have some very specific solutions from Fred and Turner, and then we have some more broad solutions. Kristen read a list of projects that have been looked at previously. So look at that solution list, and I've asked them to separate those into three categories for us. One would be concepts that do not meet our success factors. Just that, well, here's a concept and we're just not able to match it up as we heard it with one of the success factors. The second one might become a very interesting one, because that would be concepts that appear to meet our success factor but are not available to us. Generally meaning we can't get them substantially underway in 4 years and they're more expensive than $200 million. Doesn't mean they go away or that we're saying they're bad. It just means that they're not available to us for our assignment. The third category would be solutions that appear to meet our success factors and are available to us. And for that third category of solutions that appear to meet the success factors and are available to us, at least a general assessment of how they perform In other words, how do they make things better? And that could be, how do they address the most critical areas for accidents? How do they reduce travel time and improve safety? How do they affect bike or pedestrian movements? So the technical team now, we've got to put a lot of trust. Ben's a good guy to put a lot of trust in. He's working with a good group of folks. We have to put some trust that they will look at these objectively. There's no effort here to reach some predetermined end. And they've got to work real hard pretty darn quick, because we will need some time to look at some of their preliminary work and then get that to you, probably not real early in advance of our next meeting, but I would like to get it to you in advance of our next meeting so you have time to look at it. And then when we come to our next meeting, we'll have a little summary. We'll have the technical team tell us how they came up with what they've presented. We may want to, we'll probably certainly have some discussion around that a bit. And then, well, for our next meeting, we would get that result. We would see the results on performance, and from that, we may want to add to, refine, or subtract from the third category to even close in a little sharper on what we want to move forward. Now, they could come back and say, you got a great Category 3 list, and it's $500 million. But in total, but within that, there are pieces that we can move forward. So the technical team is a challenge to do that with the time we have available, and not to dig into it so deep that we get buried or bogged down. Kristen?
For those of us who aren't transportation engineers and can't guess when we look at these things, I know it's also more work in a short time, but can we get, some of these already have financial estimates of what they're going to cost, but can we offer sort of ballparks on the others, just so we kind of know what we're looking at?
We're going to do that. I want their first, I've asked for their first attention to pay attention to performance. In other words, at this point, I wouldn't necessarily want us to boot something that really performed real well, but looked like it cost $250 million. So I'm not dismissing what the charge of the Secretary gave us, but I would not. I'd like him to pay attention to performance first.
So performance measurements.
Performance measurements.
The second thing is, and this is not a solution because it's about to happen. I mean, it's a solution we have to consider. We're about to open the Meadow Creek Parkway onto 250. It might be interesting to see in a combination analysis of what that does for performance on 29.
We have not.
I know, I think it could be great to look at that.
Okay. Would that be in our basis of facts? Yeah. Okay. Ben? All right. That pretty well covers our charge to the technical team, which leads us to our next to the last item of meetings 2 and 3. First of all, the dates. I said April the 10th and April the 24th because they were 2 weeks from today. I mean, that's, again, trying to fit that in to meeting the charge, to bring recommendation to the Commonwealth Transportation Board the time that the technical team needs, that we need, and that I know VDOT and DRPT are going to need, because we likewise don't want to finish our work and have Quentin and Kevin say, we don't know what these guys were thinking, so we need a little bit of time there as well.
What was the date on that?
Well, I threw out the 10th and the 24th. And as was said before, you're welcome to name a substitute or an alternate. The only thing I would ask is that if you're elected official, the alternate be an elected official, and that we only have one alternate, so we've got a pretty good idea of who's going to show up. So we can stick with the 10th and the 24th? Is 1 o'clock a good time? Now let's get to the biggie and see what you think about place. I'll start this off by saying I'm fine with whatever we decide in terms of location. I'll make a brief pitch for doing it here and tell you why I'm making that brief pitch. It took a fair amount of time to set everything up so that we could do this live streaming and video conference. If we have the next 2 meetings here, that's not too hard to figure out because everything's been preset and established. But now look, we'll have the next 2 meetings where you want to have it. We'll just need to know quickly where, not only the geographical location, but whatever building we might be able to reserve so we can make these same arrangements.
One question I had about this, but it was too late to do anything about, and we had reserved parking, which I thanked everybody for, but because I think members of the public do want to be here, and there's not any place for them to park, and it's quite a hike up the hill, if there's a possibility of arranging for some sort of bus or shuttle from parking to here, like that.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Or how do we do that?
Yes, we can.
Maybe
Okay.
sign on.
All right.
That would be really helpful.
Okay.
Yes, we can do that, right, John?
I think this is a really good location.
I heard the question and we get an answer. So we give an amen. Okay, we can do that. Okay, Colonel?
I think this is a really good location. It's easy to get to, and it's certainly central. I think it's central to Warrenton and Danville. So,
Damon? Fred?
I'm fine with it here.
And I'd like to encourage our friends who are here from out of town to stop and eat while you're here and get money while you're here.
I came down last night and contributed. Hal, you okay with here?
Yeah, this is fine.
Sure. Well, I assume Mayor Hooge is fine with having it here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I really appreciate that. And maybe I'm just trying to think of the limited seats we have. Well, I guess we'll just, I was trying to think, boy, it would be maybe nice if we could have seats for 40 different people next time, but that, if you get here, come early, you know the fire marshal rules, and, pardon me?
There were 2 overflow rooms.
Oh, yeah, there's 2 overflow rooms. We can do everything just like we did. We'll repeat it. We'll have the overflow rooms. There's video conferencing in the Lynchburg district, in VDOT's office. There's video conferencing in the Culpeper district. It's streaming live on the internet at that Route29solutions.org, and there will be a podcast.
Questions emailed me from the press who watched the stream.
Oh, well, see,
I apologize if I've been trying to answer.
You're real time, Mayor. You're real time. So.
Philip, would it be possible to increase the number of microphones for better coverage?
You mean the media microphone? Those belong to Sean back there.
Whatever.
How is our media coverage?
Move the 2 back ones forward.
Okay.
Like Kristen gets off.
Okay. Yes, we'll do lessons learned, but having it here, I really appreciate that. Because when I started, I thought it's really going to be important to have these meetings in different locations. But so the intention was there. But as we got more into this, it became apparent that, I also say, just for what it's worth, and then we can wrap up. In some ways, it's fitting that we're here. I still call this place the Research Council. I know they have a longer name than that now, but the point of this building and institution was to bring people together to share ideas, knowledge based on facts to make things better. Now, that might have meant make better concrete or better asphalt, improve safety, but this building, this council, has served that purpose for a lot of years for the Commonwealth. So I thought about that last night and thought, that's kind of special. So I'm glad to see that things like that are what I think about these. So thanks a lot. Turner, any wrap-up issues?
I appreciate everybody around the table having an open mind and listening to the concerns that those of us not living in the immediate Charlottesville area have. So thank you for that. And I know, as somebody pointed out, I try to remember who it was, that we're all looking for the solution. I think that was you. And you're exactly right. And we need a solution, a long-term solution that's going to work, that meets the Secretary's charter, and that we don't want to lose the money to other locations. We want to make sure it's properly invested here. So thank you all for being open-minded.
Trip?
Similarly, no, I think this has been a good discussion. I do think this is the best opportunity we've had in a while to maybe get some things done and actually move forward cooperatively.
Thank you, Trip. Fred?
I too want to thank everyone for having us been here together to work together. I think I leave here much more optimistic than I came. I feel like that this group can come up with some reasonable, acceptable solutions to use the money in this matter.
Kristen?
I agree. I came, I'm leaving more optimistic than I came. I think that just hearing the voices of the people around this table, I think that we really can work together and do this. So I'm really optimistic.
Okay.
I appreciate the two engineers being here.
I do too.
And I'm saying, actually,
Jane?
Well, our community, in an insular way, has been through a lot because of the way this has gone, and we're looking forward to healing ourselves. And we're really looking forward to partnering with all of you for the solution. I feel optimistic as well. And I think you did a terrific job.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you.
I just have to do one administrative thing, adjourn.
We were happy to host the Albemarle soon to be Mayor Duggan, unless you really blow the election.
Somebody did lose, so we're right at 50. I've been told several times. No, I'm real pleased with the committee. I was sort of wondering, what does Warrington have to do with this? But Warrington does love Charlottesville and does come through Charlottesville, and anything to make it easier to get to Danville, the big corridor. I mean, I think it's good for the whole area.
Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you. Christina?
I heard some great possible solutions, and I'm very optimistic after this first meeting, so I really hope we can come together.
I appreciate your guidance in this process.
All right. You're most welcome. Christine?
I'm appreciative of some clarity around some issues and look forward to working on positive solutions both for local and street traffic.
All right. Well, we'll see you on, Susan, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll see you April the 10th, and you'll hear from me before then, and feel free to call or write anytime. So thank you.